a Wikividi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Dermot Morgan. Dermot John Morgan was an Irish comedian, actor and previously a school teacher, who achieved international recognition for his role as Father Ted Grilly in the Channel 4 sitcom Father Ted. Personal life. Morgan was born on the 31st of March 1952. His parents were Don Chad Morgan, an artist and sculptor with a passion for drama, and Hilda Holly Stokes, a celebrated beauty from Dunleary. Don Chad died young of an aneurysm, leaving Hilda with 4 children, Dermot, Paul, Denise, and Ruth, who died in childhood. Dermot married Suzanne Garmetz, a native of Hamburg, and they had 2 sons, Don and Rob. He later began a relationship with Fiona Clark, with whom he had another son, Ben. Father Trendy and the Live Mic. Born in Dublin and educated at Oatlands College, Stillorgan, and University College, Dublin, Morgan came to prominence as part of the team behind the highly successful RTE television show The Live Mic, presented by Mike Murphy. Morgan made his debut in the media on the Morning Ireland radio show produced by Jean Martin, whose sister Ella was the mother of one of Morgan's friends. It was through this contact that Morgan made the break into radio, and eventually television. Between 1979 and 1982, Morgan, who had been a teacher at St Michael's College, Aylesbury Road, played a range of comic characters who appeared between segments of the show, including Father Trendy, an unctuous trying to be cool Catholic priest given to drawing ludicrous parallels with non-religious life in 2-minute chats to camera. His other characters included a GAA bigot who waved his Hurley stick around aggressively while verbally attacking his pet hates. He lampooned the Thomas Osborne Davis's song, A Nation Once Again, by singing about a dog who saves his Irish Republican Army master by eating a grenade during a search by a notorious British paramilitary unit, the Black and Tans. When the dog farts and the grenade detonates, the British commented, "It must have been something he ate." The song climaxed with the words, "I hope that I shall live to see Fido and Alsatian once again." Morgan's success led him to leave teaching and become a full-time comedian. Kenny Live. Morgan's relationship with RTE became strained as the station tried without success to make use of what it saw as his considerable but undisciplined talent. A number of pilot shows were never aired. Morgan returned to the screen in the late 1980s playing his past roles and new ones initially on Kenny Live, a Saturday chat show presented by Pat Kenny launched to fill a gap in the schedules. When the Late Late Show moved to a Friday slot, Kenny Live axed its comedy slot in response to negative public responses to the show's format. Mr. Eastwood. Morgan released a comedy single, "Thank You Very Very Much, Mr. Eastwood," in December 1985. It was a take on the fawning praise that internationally successful Irish boxer Barry McGuigan gave his manager, Barney Eastwood, at the end of successive bouts. The single featured lines by McGuigan, Ronald Reagan, Bob Geldof and Pope John Paul II, and was the Christmas #1 in the Irish singles chart in 1985. Scrap Saturday. Morgan's biggest Irish broadcasting success occurred in the late 1980s on the Saturday morning radio comedy show Scrap Saturday, in which Morgan, co-scriptwriter Gerard Stembridge, Owen Roe and Pauline McLean mocked Ireland's political, business and media establishment. The show's treatment of the relationship between the ever-controversial Taoiseach Charles Haughey and his press secretary PJ Mara proved particularly popular, with Haughey's dismissive attitude towards Mara and the latter's adoring and groveling attitude towards his boss. The greatest leader, man of destiny, statesman, titan, a colossus, winning critical praise. Morgan pilloried Haughey's propensity for claiming a family connection to almost every part of Ireland he visited by making reference to a famous advertisement for Harp beer, which played on the image of someone returning home and seeking friends, especially Sally O'Brien, and the way she might look at you. In Morgan's version, Haughey visited somewhere in the world and, after a few seconds, the music from the advertisement began playing. At this point, the Taoiseach exclaimed, "Did I tell you, PJ, about my cousins in," before mentioning supposed relatives such as, "my cousin Francois Haughey, Helmut Haughey, Yasser Haughey, or Yitzhak Haughey." to the despairing Mara, who groaned, "Ah now Jesus, boss, come on now. Ah Jesus, sigh." The Howie/Mara double act became the star turn in a series that mocked both sides of the political divide, from Howie and his advisors to opposition Fine Gael TD Michael Noonan as Limerick disc jockey, morning, noon and night. When RTE axed the show in the early 1990s, a national outcry ensued. Morgan lashed the decision, calling it a shameless act of broadcasting cowardice and political subservience. An RTE spokesman said, "The show is not being axed. It's just not being continued." In 1991, Morgan received a Jacobs Award for his contribution to Scrap Saturday from the Irish national newspaper Radio Critics. Father Ted. Already a celebrity in Ireland, Morgan's big break in Britain came in Channel 4's Irish sitcom Father Ted, which ran for 3 series from 1995 to 1998. Writers Graham Linehan and Arthur Matthews auditioned many actors for the title role, but Morgan's enthusiasm won him the part. Father Ted focused on the misadventures of 3 Irish Roman Catholic priests who live in a parish on the fictional Craggy Island, located off the west coast of Ireland. Father Ted Crilly, Father Dougal Maguire, and Father Jack Hackett live chaotically together in Craggy Island's parochial house, along with their housekeeper Mrs. Doyle. The show received widespread popularity around the world and universal critical acclaim, often being labeled as one of the greatest sitcoms ever made. The show made Morgan a household name and won him legions of fans, developing somewhat of a cult following. BAFTA Award. In 1998, Father Ted Show won a BAFTA Award for the Best Comedy. Morgan won a BAFTA for Best Actor, and McLean was named Best Actress. The series featured many other supporting characters, including the camp, hyperactive Father Noel Furlong, played by comedian and future talk show host Graham Norton. Unreleased works. Morgan said in an interview with Gay Byrne on The Late Late Show in 1996 that he was writing a screenplay entitled Miracle of the Magyars, based on a real-life incident in the 1950s when the Archbishop of Dublin forbade Catholics from attending a football match between Ireland and Yugoslavia on religious and spiritual grounds. Yugoslavia won the match 4-1. Morgan planned to use Hungary as the opposing side to Ireland, hence the title. At the time of his death in 1998, he had completed the screenplay, but the film was never made. Morgan's first project after Father Ted was To Be Reunited, a sitcom about 2 retired footballers sharing a flat in London. According to former manager John Fisher, Morgan was scripting the program and planned to take the part of an Eamon Dunphy type who had gone on to work in journalism, but had ended up living with an old football pal. Mel Smith was in talks for the role of the friend. Morgan had been commissioned to write a drama series for the BBC. Death and legacy. A day after recording the last episode of Father Ted, Morgan had a heart attack while hosting a dinner party at his home in southwest London. He was rushed to the hospital, but died soon afterwards. His sister Denise said, "He wasn't feeling great at the end of the meal and I went to the bedroom with him. He had a heart attack and I didn't recognize it. From my limited training in first aid, I wasn't sure exactly what was happening. The symptoms didn't match what the book said. I said to him, 'I think you are okay,' and we went back to the table. He apologized for having left the room and the next thing he just collapsed. We tried to resuscitate him, but it didn't work. He had a massive heart attack." Father Ted co-star Frank Kelly, who died 18 years to the day after Morgan, said, "Dermot's mind was mercurial. I think he was a kind of comedic meteor. He burned himself out." Morgan's Requiem Mass in St. Teresa's Church in Mount Marion, South Dublin, was attended by the President of Ireland Mary McAleese, her predecessor, Mary Robinson, and by political and church leaders, many of whom had been the targets of his humour in Scrap Saturday. His body was cremated at Glasnevin Cemetery, and its ashes were buried in the family plot in Dean's Grange Cemetery. In an interview in 2009, comedian Tommy Tiernan, who acted with Morgan in the final episode of Father Ted, recalled filming the scene in which Ted dances to the theme from Shaft. Tiernan continually flubbed his lines and, as a result, Morgan was required to perform the dance repeatedly, despite pains in his heart. Tiernan believed this contributed to his fatal heart attack, which happened just 24 hours after they filmed the scene. In December 2013, a documentary, Dermot Morgan Fearless Funny Man, aired on RTE1. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like